Welcome to the Kriya Yoga Podcast, a source of inspiration and actionable education for those inspired towards the goal of enlightenment through yogic meditation. Through these interviews, discussions, and reflections, it is my intention to share the possibility of waking up to the reality of self and God realization, and to remind you of the immortal words of Paramahansa Yogananda. Don't look back. Don't look to the left or to the right. Look straight ahead to the goal and go all the way in this lifetime. I'm Ryan Kurczak, and I'll be your host on this adventure of spiritual self-discovery. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome back to the Kriya Yoga Podcast. This episode, we're going to feature a talk that was given by Ryan Strong, whom you've heard on the podcast before. Ryan Strong is a teacher in the Kriya Yoga lineage. He's a student of Roy Eugene Davis. He's also a herbalist, an Ayurvedic doctor, and a Vedic astrologer. The title of Ryan's talk is Becoming More Cosmically Minded. It's a wonderful talk. Every Sunday, Ryan and others who are members of the Kriya Yoga Alliance, they give Sunday services followed by a meditation. And so this talk comes from one of those Sundays. And if you'd like to tune in to more inspiration through the Kriya Yoga Alliance, you can just go to kriyayogaalliance.com, and there you'll see listings of workshops or classes that are being given, or you can see the calendar of events for the Sunday services and who will be giving those Sunday services. So I hope you enjoy this talk. And don't forget to bookmark and tune in through the Kriya Yoga Alliance at kriyayogaalliance.com.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining today. It's nice to see again a lot of familiar faces and some new faces as well. For those of you I haven't met yet, my name is Shalyn Tatro. I'm one of the members of Kriya Yoga Alliance. Next Sunday, Ray Booker will be offering Sunday service and meditation. And a good way to stay in touch with our offerings is to go to our website, kriyayogaalliance.com. We also have an Instagram page, which is at Kriya Yoga Alliance. So this Sunday, Ryan Strong will be offering Sunday service and meditation.
Well, Lahiri, Mahasaya, was born on September 30th, 1828. So tomorrow is the celebration of his birthday. And his Mahasamadhi, his passing, was on the 26th of September of 1895. So he lived from 1828 to 1895. And so we, Kriya yogis all over the world celebrate both his birthday and his Mahasamadhi this week. Lahiri is often known or referred to as the pole star of Kriya Yoga. He was born into a religious family, and he studied scriptures as a child, studied the Vedas specifically, and he was incredibly smart. He knew over 4 languages, and he was a householder, and he got married, and he had many children. And on a work trip, he worked for the government. And he was on a work trip when he met Mahavatar Babaji in a remote area of India. And would that be amazing, going on a work trip and meeting Babaji? But that's what happened. And Babaji initiated him and showed him the way, so to speak. And so Lahiri spent the rest of his life initiating others and teaching Kriya Yoga. And what was really unique about him, other than being spiritually awake, was that he would initiate and teach anyone. which was kind of revolutionary back then, because he would initiate women. He would initiate anyone from any caste. So it didn't matter what caste you were. It didn't matter if you were a woman. It didn't matter if you were a Catholic, a Muslim, a Jain, a Hindu. He welcomed everyone in, and he taught them Kriya Yoga. And so we just honor him, and with gratitude, because of his work and his life. That seems long ago to some of us. It wasn't that long ago, but because of his work, it's brought Kriya Yoga to us now. Kriya Yoga has spread throughout the world and has continued through time. And Mahasaya, Maha means great, and Shaya, we can translate it to mind. This was a spiritual name that was given to him by students. Great-minded, Mahashaya. And we can, oftentimes it's also translated as cosmically minded or cosmically aware. And the great cosmically minded one, right? And so it is said that we are cosmically conscious. We are cosmically conscious when we have realization, that is direct experience and knowledge, being it, experiencing it, direct experience and knowledge of our oneness, of the oneness of life, the oneness of consciousness. And so we are cosmically conscious when we are awake to the reality that exists. And until then, we want to practice being cosmically minded. Until we are fully cosmically conscious, we want to practice being cosmically minded, as it helps expand our confined little sense of self, little me. It helps us expand out. And as we expand our consciousness, as we expand our mind, then we experience higher levels of freedom. We function better, higher levels of intuition. But maybe most importantly, we suffer less. What is said is that when we become spiritually awake, when we become self-realized, when we realize that oneness, consciousness, that, of course, at first it might be a new experience, and there might be a novelty to it. But what is the most interesting fact that is said to be true about it is that when you experience it, you realize that it has always been that way. The oneness. And also there's a part of you that's always been aware of it. It's just always been that way, and it will always be that way. So when you experience that oneness, you realize that this is natural. This is my natural, pure state that has always been this way, and that will always be this way. And a matter of fact, everyone is experiencing that on some level. And it's just this restricted sense of self, this restricted sense of viewpoint, false ideas, but it's just this identification. It's like a veil that keeps us from actively experiencing the truth of this reality, that there is one power, there is one source that created the universes, that created all of that we experience and see and more. It comes from one place, and it is sustained. It comes from one thing, and it is sustained. Its power that sustains it is one thing as well, and there's nothing that is outside of it, and that it has no beginning and it has no end. Now, until we are fully awake or cosmically conscious, again, we want to practice being cosmically minded. And for the sake of this talk, we can look at a definition of being cosmically minded. The first definition, a definition would be contemplating the vastness of space, the vastness of our universe in relation to our little planet, right? Our little planet Earth, contemplating our little planet in contrast with the vastness of the physical universe, right? And a fun fact, and I'm going to have several of those for you today, but one fact, I sound like a YouTuber, fun fact. One amazing fact is that it is theorized, right, that for every grain of sand on Earth, so one grain of sand, and this includes all the sand in the ocean, at the bottom of the ocean. I mean, remember, we are a water planet. There's only a little bit of land compared to how much water there is. And so when we think of all the beaches and all the sand within the ocean, for every grain of sand on this planet, that equals 160 billion planets. One grain of sand equals 160 billion planets, not stars, planets, right? Now, of course, we don't know how much sand is on the planet and how many planets are out there in the universe, but this statistic comes from NASA, right? So scientists sat down and did all of their magic work with math to come up with that idea. It just shows the sheer vastness of this outer creation. Another way we can look at it is we become cosmically minded when we contemplate, we examine, we research, we learn about the vast, or we can think of the immense enormity and grandness of this creation, of this life, in contrast with our little self, me, or little self, right? We can contemplate the enormity, the grandness of this life, of this creation. We contemplate it, we put our mind on it, we research it in contrast to this little sense of self. And as we do so, we experience a little bit of expansion. Or as it is said, or what is said is our mind expands. And this is true. When I was 16, when I was a sophomore in high school, I had to write a research paper for an English class. And I had to write it was the first big research project that I ever had to do, and I had to research a subject, write a paper about it. And then I had to give a class or a speech on it, and had to come up with a thesis statement and then back up that statement with facts. And I don't know if I was being a rebel or if I was being a goof. I'm not sure why. I really couldn't tell you. But the subject that I chose for that research and that talk was empty space. Yeah, empty space. And somehow I got that approved by the teacher. But I can tell you that it was an amazing experience for that my 16-year-old self studying empty space. I had to get books and read about physics and all of these things, and I came across a couple of things that blew my mind. And the thesis statement for that talk was that space is infinite within itself. That empty space, that was the subject. Empty space is infinite within itself. And I had a lot of facts that made this point. And one of the things that I had to do is I had to define empty space. And there's many ways that you can define it, but the easiest way, or the way that I chose to, is to examine atoms, right? What is around us? What is all around us? Atoms. Well, what is inside of an atom, right? Not much. An atom itself is almost completely empty of electrons, protons, and so forth. But inside of that atom is a vast emptiness compared to the size of what is in there, right? And an atom is so small, right? But that's not what was so interesting. It was that physicists theorize that there is enough energy within one atom. There's enough energy within one atom that it has infinite potential. It is theorized that one atom, if manipulated in a certain way, it could create another universe. So it has enough potential energy that it could create another universe. And even if that isn't true, or it's just theoretical, we know for sure that an atom has an incredible amount of potential energy. And you can think of that, the energy that is released when an atom is manipulated or split, and how much energy is absolutely released. So little 16-year-old me, that just knowing that, contemplating that, experienced a little bit of an expansion of my sense of reality, my sense of Ryan and the world. Space is infinite within itself, right? And the other thing that I came across that I'd never thought about, and to that point, was that physics at that time was saying that all things came from one place, right? And that wasn't so radical. All things came from one place, but that everything in the universe, that everything, all the planets, everything, all the gas, all the stars, everything in the universe came from one thing, is of one substance. Even though it looks like or seems like there's many moving pieces that are separate, it's actually one thing, right? That's physics. So we can come to the same conclusions of yogic philosophy and all other authentic spiritual paths by contemplating the nature of this reality. We might come up with different words or different ways to describe it, but everything is one thing, comes from one place, and then it's infinite within itself. You know, that blew my mind. And the fact that one of the things that came across back then was that the physicists, they'd be observing a certain physical attribute of life, of this reality, but as they are observing it, looking at it, what was observed was changed just by the observer observing it, you know. And it wasn't until later that I understood what that meant, you know. In a lot of ways, science is very new, but these concepts and understanding of why that is true and how that works is, of course, held within many philosophies, especially yogic philosophy. Yeah, this outer universe internally, but especially the outer, both are amazing. But just by placing our awareness and studying and researching, contemplating this physical universe, it leads us towards, it can lead us towards realization, but it also just kind of removes some of those restrictions. So the thing is, most people, their consciousness, their life experience is just held so tightly within this small area, you know, their head, their consciousness, their body, all of the thoughts, all of our feelings, all of our emotions, our likes, our dislikes, all of it. It's all held within this real tight space. And it's just a reflection of this little me, right? And in that is our fear, right? In that is our selfishness. It's the cause of feeling like we could lose something. We have to hold on to it. We have to be attached to it, right? Because what about me, right? And the fear and the selfishness and self-action, it all comes from this limited, confined, and restricted sense of little me. And so just by being cosmically minded, which means just thinking bigger, when we think bigger, when we conceive of a bigger concept, the vastness of space in relationship to little me, right? That confinement, it opens up a little bit more, right? It expands a little bit. And then we have a little bit more breathing room. Our experience of reality is a little bit more vast or a little more expanded. And this is really important. And it doesn't matter if you are on the path of Kriya Yoga, or if you're just wanting to be more happy and more free. By contemplating and researching and placing your mind on the vastness of this reality, you experience less suffering and you become more awake. And a part of this being thinking bigger, or thinking in a bigger way, being cosmically minded, is questioning everything, right? It's to question your own beliefs, your own what you assume to be true. You have to question it. Quite. Don't believe anything I say. Question. You can believe it, but you can question it. Question it. Question everything. It's my experience as I've gotten older to notice that a lot of people believe things that aren't true. And they believe them because they've never really looked into it or done any work on their own to know, to verify it. They just heard something enough times that they believe it to be true. Right? In our little self, we have our individual mind, but that individual mind is connected to every mind. There's only one mind. And it's all connected. It's an aspect of this reality. And part of the influence of restricted ideas, thoughts, and ideas that aren't true are the influence of that collective on us. So it could be as simple as just hearing something that's not true and believing it. It can be living in an environment with other people that have ideas and attitudes that are provincial or small-minded. And it can just be the influence of our community, of our collective. So we want to step away from that. We want to establish ourselves within our practice, and so that we're kind of like a house. So like all the electricity goes out to houses, but there's some houses that have solar panels or other ways to generate its own energy, and it pumps that energy back into back to the source of the power plant. Again, like power plants generate all this energy that comes to our house, but some people put solar panels up and it pumps that energy back, right? So it's making a difference. And it's much like that for us. We don't want all that information and all that influence from the collective to restrict our consciousness. We want to establish ourselves within our practices, think more cosmically minded, and then as we do that, we are influencing everyone around us and everything around us in a very positive way. One of the things that I want to bring up before we meditate together, as far as erroneous beliefs or restricted beliefs, is the belief that I hear all the time that this world is in horrible shape. Oh, this world, it's never been so bad. This world has never been so bad. Right. I've gone to this wonderful New Thought center here in California that share the teachings of Kriya Yoga. And it's just a wonderful place. But on more than one occasion, one of the head ministers teaching right away gets up in front of all of the people there. And one of the first things they say, oh, in the world today, the horrible stuff. They start off with this like, this world is so bad. It's so sad. It's so hard. Right. And that's kind of like, I think that's sort of like maybe the wrong attitude. This world is absolutely amazing. This reality is phenomenal. There's nothing mundane about it. It's incredible. But my point is, all we have to do to understand that the world is not in such a bad place, that actually, if we look at it, the world, as far as we know it, as far as this current epoch or history, right? So what we know of human civilization from where we know it kind of began, gets a little murky, but we know where it kind of started to now. The world has never been a more safe place. The world has never been in better shape. Human beings have never lived in a better way. Now, I'm not saying there's not a lot of things that need to be improved. Of course there is. But if we zoom out from our little sense of self, which, my life, here, I'm born here, and I have the memory of my life and the experience of my life. And then I have the influence of my parents, and maybe I kind of know a little bit about my grandparents' life, right? So if we're only looking at it from that real limited place, it's like, wow, it's so bad. So much is happening. But if we zoom out and look at the last 200 years, if we look at the last 300 years, and we actually look at the data, we'll see that everything is improved. From plagues to famine to how much calories each person can eat, the availability of food, human rights, rights of women, gay rights, access to healthcare, access to education, infant mortality. Everything is improving, and not in a small way. When you look at the information, things are improving in a phenomenal way, and actually very quickly. Especially in the last 150 years. One of the most important statistics for me when I'm looking at this is, there's all these wars and all this stuff that's happening. But if you look at the data, all war and conflict is significantly decreased in the world. And where is it? Oh, here it is. This is a wonderful book if you're curious about some of what I'm talking about. It's called Enlightenment Now by Steven Pinker. It has nothing to do with spirituality. The term Enlightenment Now is like, basically he's gone through so many different he's analyzed famine, he's analyzed plagues, he's analyzed infant mortality, he's analyzed all of these things and looked at the data. And so it's kind of a dry read in a lot of ways. It's just basically a bunch of charts that proves the point. Enlightenment now, it means to take note that things are improving, and they've improved so much. I'm not saying we don't have a lot of work to do. But we don't want the erroneous belief or the negative attitudes and the beliefs of the media and all this stuff, especially in this election season, to limit or restrict what is real, what is true, but also cause us to feel fear and identify with that little self. We want to be cosmically minded. We want to think bigger. Two other little facts, fun facts before we move on. Because I was when I was researching this, I wanted to come up with some fun facts, and there was too many to share. But one that I wanted to share, there's two. The first one is that if we took our DNA, all the DNA just in our body, just one person's body, and just lined it up end to end, it would go out into space 11.5 light years. You have that much DNA in your body that if you put it in a row, in a line, it would go out into space 11.5 light years. It would go to the sun and back, from Earth to the sun and back 160 times. That's how much DNA you have in your body. Your blood vessels in your body, if for an average adult human being, if you took all the blood vessels out of your body and lined it end to end, it would reach 100,000 miles. Right now, you have enough blood vessels in your body that would equal about 100,000 miles. That would wrap around the Earth more than 4 times right now. I guess the last one, I said I wasn't going to share this one, but I think it's interesting, and it helps us, helps me at least have a larger point of view, is that if we look at the time scale of life on Earth to now, so when life started on Earth to now, and we look at humans when we came on the scene, the earliest evidence of humans, if we gave it, if all of time, life when it started to now was 24 hours, right? So if all of the time on this planet of life it was 24 hours. The first humans to now would be less than 3 seconds. Less than 3 seconds on that 24-hour scale. All right, so let's honor Lahiri Mahasaya by being more cosmically minded, or even better, to be become spiritually awake. Right, so let's meditate together.